Florida State statistical predictions and breakout players here on Locked On Seminoles.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by Nissan. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later in the episode. Today's show is going to be about stats, my predictions on them for Florida State as we get ready for spring ball. I'll go over the dates momentarily. And my breakout players. This is one of my favorite things to predict. I put a lot of time into this each and every year with any team that I look at and research. I'm going to go over those. We'll end with a little basketball, some thoughts that I have if Coach Loucks is going to make an impact and really get the fans behind him. But about 90% of this show is going to be Florida State football. So first thing that I want to talk about are the stats. Last year, as many of you know that kind of come in and just tune into Florida State football in any way, shape, or form. You heard it. I don't care which outlet it was. It could be this one, ESPN, Fox, or anything. Saturday Down South, anybody you checked in on, they're talking about how bad Florida State was statistically on offense. Well, some of the things defense weren't there either. So right off the bat, I want to give some predictions. I've kind of changed my tune just a little bit. I'm a little more positive than I was, and maybe I'm further ahead than some other people, but here's where I have Florida State, and I'll do offense first, and I'll do defense on a couple of key stats. Number one, scoring is what everybody wants to hear. Scoring sells tickets. Scoring is fun. Scoring gets people excited from all different genres. So let's go there. I originally thought around 29 a game. I went up a couple of points, and I'll tell you why, that I went to 31. With Castellanos being a guy that's in the offense, he's healthy, he's a senior, I was feeling pretty good. I wanted to see how things went all the way through the winter conditioning period before I really got more excited than I was originally. From the little bit of feedback that I've gotten and just reading the tea leaves from other people I know, it sounds like Thomas Castellanos has become a bit of a leader. And most importantly, I think he's a guy that's ready to kind of have a breakout year of his own. He started before, so you can't really use him in that category, but a breakout for Florida State at least, because the quarterback position was such a sieve last year that they need to have somebody take the reins, not just throwing the ball, handing it off, getting in the right play call, all the off the field stuff that, quite honestly, most of you probably don't really care to hear much about. But leadership has been brought up with Thomas Castellanos multiple times, including the strength and conditioning coach, which that's a great sign because he spends more time with the players in the offseason than anybody, head coaches, assistant coaches, anybody. It's the strength coaches that are always with the players. He's very high on Thomas. And I haven't heard a single thing negative about him. Now, I'm sure that he's not perfect. He's human like anybody else, but that's a really good sign. My only concern, like anybody else, is can he stay healthy all the way through the season because they're going to run him a lot. And that's just one of those things. It's feast or famine when you've got a running offense like Florida State will have this next season. But his leadership and with all the skill talent they got coming in, Deuce Robinson, et cetera, overall, I'm picking Florida State to go to 31 points a game. Keep in mind, they didn't score anywhere near 20 points per game last year. It was 15 points something off the top. I didn't even want to look it up. But it was dead last out of the Power Four. It was just atrocious. So 31 points per game for the Noles on offense. Second, and this is another one that's really important because this is how you get to scoring all those points. Last year, Florida State's rushing offense, something I talked about almost daily on this show because it was so porous. I think they will hover around 200 yards rushing per game. Now, that's a bit of a cheat code because A, Gus is going to try to run the football regardless, and B, Thomas Castellanos might be dropping back to pass on 3rd and 18 and go get you 17 yards. But stats are still stats. I think, some of those are going to still come up short and you're still going to punt or whatever. But Florida State will move the football on the ground at a very high rate. I think they will be a top 50 offense even in the first few games when they're playing, they got Bama, et cetera. When you talk about rushing the football, because Castellanos will bail them out. Until you see him play live, you cannot put into perspective what kind of athlete Thomas Castellanos is. I'm going to repeat that. Until you see Thomas Castellanos live, and I do not care about what you've seen on TV, it is not the same. When you see him in Doak, you will understand his ability to change direction and hit the gas after a stop and start or using a dead leg move or whatever is extraordinary. He is going to make some head spin in the stands and some guys that are wearing helmets from the opposite color jerseys. He will create some of those. And then they got just a plethora of good running backs. Riddell, they got Cam, they got just so many guys that have experience. And then you got a guy like, let's hope, and I'm going to talk about him quite a bit here in a minute, Jalen Lucas, different guys that you can use in many different ways for option football, for a draw play, for a screen. The running backs will be able to help him out in sustained drives. This is going to be a unique group of running backs. So I've got Florida State, give or take 200 yards. I'll just use that as an easy number, 200, which could get you in the top 25 in the nation pretty quickly. If you take out like the service academies and whatnot, this will get P4. They might be one of the top 12 to 15 rushing offenses of the country this next year. And some are probably saying, Brian, you're insane. I'm telling you, based on just what I've heard, and I trust in Thomas Castellanos a lot more than other people do, I like where that's going. Now, just because you can run the ball doesn't mean you're going to have a good offense. Let me be very clear about that. I think they're still going to have a lot of problems. Consistency against some of the top-notch teams, how well the offense throws the ball on first and second down, timing and rhythm. Those are things that I still think or show me instead of I feel confident. I'm 50-50 on that. And I think it will still be Florida State's biggest downfall next year. And it's a question I have here in a little bit, and I'll go into more specifics. Third thing for offense, and this is kind of a bugaboo because it just drove me nuts last year. It's not that they had a gazillion of them, but it just seemed like when Florida State would finally start to get over the hump, finally, they would have a turnover. Like they'd be in a really good drive, and it would just be a mishandling of a snap or a handoff, or like you could see the quarterback and the receiver were completely on a different page. They had 22 turnovers. That's a lot. I think they'll cut into that about a third off, and they'll get down to 15. That's still not where you need to be. But again, this is a brand new offense. Offensively and defensively, you're going to have some catastrophe plays that are 100% about new scheme. It's just part of having a new offense and a new defense. It's not fun, but that's why I still think it'll be higher than they would like. Of course, you don't want any, but I think it'll be about 15. That's not bad. It's a heck of a lot better than 22. And I think some of those will also be quote unquote aggressive turnovers, like Castellanos throwing a bomb, or they're running down the field, making big plays. And it's just a 10th play of the drive. Somebody puts a helmet on the football. It happens. There won't be as many egregious turnovers on top of the fact they just couldn't move the ball last year. Everybody just attacked the backfield because they could, and Florida State couldn't throw it or run it. I think Florida State will really mitigate their turnovers. Defensively, these are a little bit more basic, but maybe the one that'll surprise the people the most is probably the rushing defense. I think it'll be one of the best in the country, and I say it for two reasons. Coach White and all the defensive coaches, whether they came in this year or they've been there, they've got a really good staff. I think they have lucked out with how many big-bodied D linemen they had on campus, and then they added guys too, McCray, et cetera. I don't think Florida State is going to hurt with a D line that's going to a three-man front, whether they're playing a 1 or 2 gap. Usually it's minimum a year and usually 2 towards the back end before a team really adjusts well to a 3-man line. It is just polar opposite in schematics. But Florida State's going to run a hybrid, which helps a little. And no offense to Nebraska, Florida State's going to be playing with more talent than what Nebraska did the first year Coach White came there, and they had a really good defense their first year. Why can't they do that at Florida State? You got Big Darrell in the middle. You've got a plethora of guys, plus Kevin Wynn coming in. You got multiple transfers. You got Williams coming off the edge, the kid from Nebraska. Like they have got a plethora of front guys that are big, athletic, and long. They fit it. It's just one of the rarest things that I've seen. Just part of it's just potluck. A few transfers that were really key. I get that. But Florida State's rushing defense, I've got them just under 110 yards a game. They'll be top 15 in the nation. if everything goes well. Even if they were giving up 115 to 120, that'd be pretty good. They'd still be top 25. And I've said this for a while, but I just wanted to reiterate it. They will be one of the better rushing defenses in the ACC in the country. Coaching staff's good. They got the right kind of players to fit it. A lot of experienced guys too. Next, turnovers. I think they're going to be a team that will at least improve some. I don't think they'll be dominant with it, but they'll be pretty good. They'll be around 20 turnovers. They need to probably be higher. But as I noted with the offense, it's the same deal with the defense. You must be able to understand the scheme and fully and all that. And year one, that's hard. There's going to be a few chances they miss on just because it's year one with scheme. That's okay. They'll be more consistent and they'll be harder to run on, so teams won't score as much. Finally, the other defensive stat that I want to predict, 35 sacks. They could make 40. It wouldn't shock me, but I need to see a couple more guys take a step forward in spring. When we come back, I'm going to talk about some of the players that I think are going to do well, some of the continuity issues, and some of the questions I have. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart from top-seeded stars, unexpected upsets. These guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada and Clear-Cut Team of the Week, the Duke Blue Devils. John Shire's team, led by National Player of the Year candidate Cooper Flagg, just ripped through the Atlantic Coast Conference going 19-1. The Devils were plus 434 points in ACC games, the largest point differential by a power conference team in league play since Kentucky in 1953 to 1954. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what the Blue Devils have done. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here already to conquer and the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the new Nissan Armada or any Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. There are a lot of different things that Florida State needs to do to make their spring ball work. So first off, I just want to get the spring dates out of the way in case you haven't seen them. I'm just going to list these off real quick, but then we're going to get into some things they really need to do for all my predictions to happen and some that I'm still a little iffy on, like the passing game. I've got a lot of questions there. We'll get into that momentarily. But here are the spring practice dates. It begins on the 19th, so we're 8 days away, just over a week. Right now, Florida State's on spring break. 21st, the 26th, and then the 28th, which is their first scrimmage on March 28th. April 2nd, April 4th, 6th, and 9th, and then on the 11th, 12th, 16th, 18th, and then on the 20th is the spring game. Here's the ironic part. A lot of people didn't know this. A lot of colleges are having a practice after a spring game. What it means is they're going through corrections. It's kind of a walkthrough. So practice 14 is the spring game for the Noles. The next chance they get to practice will be the next day. Just kind of a go through. Hey, this is what we did right. This is what we did wrong. This is how we improve. So here are the things that I have the most. And again, offense has a longer way to go. So I'm going to focus on that a little bit more. These are questions, comments kind of combined. Anybody has thought on it, fire away. Number one, the thing that I want to see the most, and I know this is hard because I noted this earlier, continuity. I get it that Gus is coming in, but this isn't his first rodeo. He's an experienced coach. He's scored a lot of points wherever he's went. They have to be able to really be continuity-wise, the best up front, which that's rough when you got 4 transfers likely to start, but they got to find a way to have continuity up front and then just everybody on the same page in general. More receivers blocking. That's something I complained about constantly last year. Like the receivers got to do a better job with that. More consistency with the timing with blocks or when they hit the hole. Just continuity in general across the offense. There's nobody out there that's not in favor of it as a Florida State fan, I'm sure, but if you really think about it, how many times was a guy just a play away from, or a step away, from hitting a big play, and they didn't miss block, lack of effort, didn't time the cutback right, whatever it was. Florida State was just so miserable at getting its own way. Continuity will take away from that. Number 2, with that, it was penalties, not just volume. What do you all think? But Florida State would just have the most ill-timed false start, hold, whatever it was, and just put them in the crosshairs for the other team's pass rushers. It'd be 3rd and 3. You get a false start and it's 3rd and 8. Man, that just changes the barometer of that drive. Doesn't sound like much, but 3rd and 3 to 3rd and 8, like the percentage almost doubles for you getting it. I mean, it's just going in the wrong direction, by the way. So we'll see if that can really work out for them. Also, just to put it in perspective, just throw this in here for the defense, run gap fits and tackling. It was not as bad as the offense in general, but when it was bad, it was bad. I just want to throw those things in. They got to have more continuity with that too. Passing consistency. This is my biggest concern with the offense. And it probably is for most people. They couldn't pass protect last year or really do much else up front. You've got a quarterback, though, that's mobile. He has a cannon for an arm, and he's a senior. I know he's a first-year player at Florida State, but Thomas Castellanos is a really athletic and big-time thrower. Like, when he gets rolling, it's impressive. You got to give him time, though. Do they come up with a second receiver? I think it's pretty safe to say Deuce Robinson will be your number one. Squirrel White is there. He'll probably lead the team in receptions. He'll be the slot. Gus does a lot of things with screens, reverses, and short passes to his slot to make the other team respect that position so they don't double outside guys as much, which makes sense. Squirrel will probably lead the team in receptions, but you still got to have a guy outside that really comes in. Is it Hakeem? Is it BJ Gibson? Is it something? How does that all play out at the flanker spot to the wide side of the field? That'll be the critical question. And I don't know the answer to that. We're going to have to see it, because if that position works, it helps Squirrel have more space and then Deuce have more space, then your yards after catch will go through the roof. Should be pretty good. In all honesty, could be one of the best in the country. Consistency from the running game, and I'm not talking about take Castellanos out of it. That's my next one. How good will it be when you just hand off and run counter tray, something that's really basic like an outside zone? How consistently can you get 4 or more yards? That's the barometer in football. Get 4 yards at minimum on first down and put the other team in the crosshairs, not the other way around. Florida State was just such a yo-yo last year. They'd have a quarter where they averaged like 6 yards a carry. Then the next quarter, they'd average 0.8. It was just all over the map. They couldn't adjust when the defense did something different. So I know Thomas is going to run around and make plays, but they got to do better, a lot better, as it relates to giving the football to, quite honestly, a really good group of running backs. And I'm just going to throw him in here now. Jalen Lucas is my pick to click in the fall. I know he's been coming off an injury. I don't know how much he's going to participate between now and the end of summer workouts, regardless of what they say in the press conferences. I need to see it. Knee injuries for guys like him could be tough. Let's see. But by fall, that's going to be a secondary player to Squirrel White. That's really annoying to deal with. Screens, draws, option plays, reverses. I think he's going to be a big play guy, even though he's not going to get more than probably 5 to 7 touches a game. He will be annoying for other teams. Just my pick to click, and that is Jalen Lucas. I really like him. Now, this is one that I already kind of touched on, but I'm just going to throw it out there again. What's the wide receiver rotation like, and who is, quote unquote, that number 2 receiver? If they don't have a definitive number 2, and I'm not counting Squirrel on this, because like in Gus's offense, the slot is its own entity. You're half running back, half receiver, because he's going to get some reverses and he's going to get the ball in a lot of ways. He's going to have a blast. He'll be a lot of fun to watch. David Lucas, too. I'm talking about that outside spot, again, to the outside. They need to have a definitive guy the other team wants to know where he's at on every play. If they do not, Deuce is going to have a safety over him all day, and it's going to be really hard to score against quality competition, because you can't just grind out 12, 14-play drives every single drive. It's not how college football works. You need to hit big shots down the field. Got to have somebody out there at that spot. And then my last thing for the offense, please get the ball to the tight ends a lot. I think Gus will, but Florida State has a unique player in Landon Thomas. I'm not sure how much Amari will play on offense. We're going to go through that this spring, because he's going to, for those of you who don't know, Amari Williams is going to play both sides. He's going to play some pass rushers, he's going to play tight end. We'll see how that goes. I have no idea, but bottom line, Landon Thomas needs to be a threat, whether they use him as an H-back, put him in the slot, screens, over the middle, whatever. He is a very unique football player. I've known him since he was a freshman in high school, and he is a very, very big kid then. He was 6'4", 6'5" when he was a freshman. Like, he was a big dude already. Time to see him kind of take that next step, and people start talking about him as a possible All-American candidate. I really think that he can be. Physically, he's got the traits, and he's not going to be featured from the other team's perspective, in my opinion. They're going to worry about Deuce and Thomas. Those are going to be their two main focuses, and I get it. There's a chance that Landon Thomas has a huge year if Florida State uses him properly. When we come back, we're going to talk about the defense and some of the things they've got to do, because they've got a chance to be really, really good next year, even though it is year one with the defensive staff. That is next here on Locked on Seminoles. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players they love. Now, with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing Florida State. And with Roy, you also get to choose the player you want to represent, decide how much money you want to contribute, and get exclusive content straight from the players that you back. The best part? If that player transfers from Florida State, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of Florida State University sports. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Florida State athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite Florida State football players. Defense is really interesting for Florida State this next year, and I think it'll be ahead of the offense. I've kind of made that clear, but I still have a few questions and comments. The first one's a comment, because this is something that I've heard for years. I've talked to guys about this for years. College coaches are insanely stubborn as a general rule. I'm just going to say this one time and just kind of let it go. And we'll know by the end of the Alabama game if they tried to do this. Do not install too much. What I mean by that is, especially with the new front, you can put in too much in terms of terminology and too many different plays instead of here's our base package with a few twists and let our athletes go get the ball carrier. If you put in too much, it's paralysis by analysis. Now, I know a lot of coaches that they would rather lose just about than not have their whole system in. Just they're that linear in how they think. I don't think Coach White is that way, but we're going to find out. So that is my biggest concern, and let's just see how they do it. Number two, on the same point, each player that they have, like, again, Florida State's got a lot of really good athletes on defense, especially that secondary. Kai Bates and all these guys coming up. I don't know who it's going to be that ends up starting. Jabril Rawls, all kinds of possibilities in that secondary. They need each guy to have something they do great. Not good, great. Florida State has a plethora of opportunities with their nickel and dime packages in particular. So I want to see them find something for each guy. Like, for instance, Blake Nicholson. He's one of my favorite players on Florida State's team. Maybe he finds a niche as a guy that does a good job when he blitzes, coming from one side, going around, looping around to the A-gap on the others, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be complex. Just be great at that. Make the other team think, and you play fast. When that happens, defenses usually do pretty well. Finally, with that nickel and dime, they should be elite. And this is the one area I hope the players up front in particular, the D-line and the outside backer, the jack position, really do well, because they have a lot of guys in the secondary with length, speed, and now experience. It's a pretty experienced group. Gene Brown's back, etc. They've got guys. Can they find a way to be elite in that nickel based on the pass rush? I'm not saying get home. I said that they'll get at least 35 sacks. It'd be great if they could get to 40, but I think they'll get to 35 sacks this year. Can they get home enough in the terms of the quarterbacks throwing it up? I've got them going about 20 turnovers for the year, 18, maybe a little low. But if they can just get home a little bit there with that back 4 or 5, 6, depending on the down, base package, nickel or dime, I think Florida State could push for 25 turnovers. Darrell Jackson and these guys, How they use them and how they figure out the front, that's a big question mark for me, but it could be a lot better than I'm thinking. I might have undersold them. I'm the first to admit I'm a glass half empty guy. That turnover number, if I told the coaches I think they're going to get about 20, they'd probably be mad. Most coaches would, but no, we want 20. Well, you can want a lot of things. I need to see it. The key to that is the quarterback making horrible decisions when they're under duress, which is what college quarterbacks usually do. The front seven, and specifically the down 4/pass rushers, if they're doing their job, Nicholson and some of the guys they got at linebacker, they got some speed there. We could see some pick sixes for Florida State's defense. That's just my opinion. Now, to wrap up the show, I have three things that I just want to talk about briefly for the basketball team. This is something that it's very similar to what I just said about football, and I'm just going off of what Luke Loucks said with his team, what he wants to see. I'm taking this from an approach of, I'm from Indiana, like basketball is in my blood. What fans in today's era want to see, how you're going to build the program, all that. It's only 3 or 4 things here. This is pretty basic. Number one, this team needs to have a wow factor on any of this, but especially with the way they pass the basketball and team play. I know Luke wants that, but that's going to come more through recruiting and how he takes care of the transfer portal situation after this semester completes. And he's evaluated the roster and he talks to everybody, the trainers and the strength and conditioning, who comes and goes. He needs to have some passing and some team chemistry that fans buy into, because that'll lead to points, that'll lead to cheers, that'll lead to layups and dunks, wide open threes. Just from watching Florida State a little bit this year, they weren't terrible at it by any means, but there's another gear they can hit. And Luke's a guy that understands that because the position he played, he handled the ball quite a bit. If you have elite passing from your point to your center, he talked about not positionless basketball, but guys that are versatile. If he can truly do that, Florida State will start packing the arena. Second, and this one is just a point blank. There's just no way around this. They were pathetic at shooting three-pointers this year. Not bad, pathetic. They were 299th. That as of this recording. I mean, 31.9% from behind the arc is awful. Awful. There is no shortcut. When he goes to the portal, even if he has to sacrifice a little bit of athleticism, which I know no coach wants to do, he's got to go find at least one, if really two. I'm going to knock them down shooters. I don't care if they're guys out of the MEAC, whatever conference, Big South, whatever. They got to get some shooters. I know Leonard Hamilton focused on big guys, and that's cool. But you've got to be able to hit threes to a certain degree. And again, from a fan perspective, seeing that is just not going to bring people to the stadium. It's not. You must get shooters on the roster. And then finally, this is something that he talked about, and I'm just curious about. I don't know how he's going to do it because it depends on the roster again. Tempo is a very broad term in the game of basketball. Very broad. Slow down, 4 corners, one-on-one with a high pick and roll. There's different kinds of tempo based on game situation, shot clock, into half, into game, all of that. But if you play overall, forget situational, faster pace, you'll get more butts and seats. And I know that's a little iffy year one because, it's 100% on this transfer portal, and maybe he gets one high school kid that's a good player too. But you're not going anywhere with the fans unless you bring in an exciting brand. Florida State basketball has been through a rough stretch. They really need to be more exciting. And I'm not saying this is a game show. I mean, you're still got to be consistency with passing and how you run your offense and defense and all those things. But for the love of mankind, there needs to be some tempo and needs to bring people from all backgrounds to want to go see it. This is cool to go to a Florida State basketball game. That's even year one. Year two and onward, it should be a lot easier because you've got a full recruiting class and all that. But if you can find a way to play up tempo in year one and be exciting, I think Florida State basketball fans would love it. And you would actually get more fans to come to the arena. That's just my opinion. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Hit that like button, that notification bell, subscribe, share this pod. We will see you all again tomorrow. Take care.